Today, I am joined by my good friend Bagel Nana. He is going to also help discuss today's topic of nutrition and optimizing race nutrition for endurance races. So what a great topic to discuss today. We always start off here with a definition of exactly what we want to get out of this. So this key topic talks about optimum levels of marathon race nutrition, including your hydration and carbohydrate intake to maximize your performance, to optimize your best performance. So this is ideal for you if you have ever bonked in a marathon. That's not what you think, guys. That refers to more specifically running out of energy and fatiguing significantly, and thus not having enough energy to continue at the same speed or to continue at the same sort of vein, and having to walk or reduce your pace crazily. So those that have already started their marathon plans, that are building up towards those as well already, you would have received your gold envelopes of some random nutritious things that might look like this, or some sweets, or some revies, or whatever it is. Now, these are personalized to you based on your goal and what your coach feels like you need to trial out as part of today's topic. So this is either based on what you've given already in previous marathon blocks or general feedback through Personify, or some of the barriers you've overcome or had as a challenge, for example, not being able to eat gels effectively or so on, where we've looked for different solutions. So today, the key parts we look to find out is just introducing this topic. The real goals, as I discuss later on, comes from your feedback during your training that optimizes exactly what works best for you. So let's get into it. Let's delve into this, team. So training is the ideal time to test out all of these products. And those that have seen me in the past, and when I've tried out the caffeine supplements, for example, on a call, it doesn't have the best of effects in terms of speed of chat. It also has found some negative impacts with maybe some endurance runs when you go early. And I talk about that a bit later. When you have maybe a lot of caffeine and you notice that you run really fast and slowly run out of steam. So training, and specifically for you guys, your Airtable plan is the best way to note what you have taken as a run nutrition. And today's topic we talk about during the race itself, during the run, as a fuel, as a supplement to help maximize your results. Now, for those new to the calls or those coming on to their first live run, you have the benefit here, guys, of adding in questions. Now, this topic is key for every single one of us. So if you have a question you've always wondered about, maybe it's not your first marathon and something's happened in the past, add it in here. It will benefit the rest of the group. You're going to send that privately to me, or you can add it by clicking on the speech bubble below and just floating into the questions, and I'll look to answer that too. So we'll cover a couple of key topics from your fact sheet. So first of all, record. The reason you've got some potential nutrition supplements in your pack is because I want you to try them out. I want you to test to see if they help benefit, they make you feel like you have more energy during your run or less energy during your run, or they upset your stomach, they don't upset your stomach, all the things that we get nervous about. Just test them out on training, with training, because the last thing you want to do is try something new on race day that all goes to pot. We need to know on race day exactly what we're looking to do in a robot fashion. Just plain and simply, first tick, next step, next step, next step. So we log it, we add that into your comment section on Airtable. If you're not sure where that is, let me know. Most of you have added a couple of comments in already. So that's the first part. The second thing that we look to discuss, and one of the main things I would talk about as he looks around for his drink, is hydration. So the fluid that we take on board will determine actually how our cells are working. Every single cell in your body needs water or some form of fluid to work effectively. So however much you lose, oh, look at that. And just a random hand comes in. Perfect. Well timed. So with those, the amount of fluid that you lose determines what we call our sweat rate during the marathon. And in today's talk, we discuss actually how to calculate that. In fact, I'll get straight into it now. You can calculate your sweat rate, for those that are new to this, by weighing yourself completely starkers before you go out for your run. So my top tip to you is get your running stuff ready. Ideally not at a local leisure centre, ideally somewhere relatively quiet, like a bathroom just before you head out the door. Strip off, jump onto the scales, measure in kilograms. Once again, that's in kilograms. And then go for your run. Come back immediately, strip down, jump back on, measure in kilograms, and have a look at what the weight loss equivalent is. Okay? Now, for every 1 litre of fluid lost, it counts as 1 kilogram. So if you go for a half marathon, you lose 2 kilograms of weight in that time frame, because you don't significantly lose body fat or muscle right away when you run, it tends to be fluid that disappears. This tells us that we're 2 litres down in that half marathon, thus 4 litres potentially in a marathon. Now, this data is important because it now tells us how much water we need to efficiently avoid dehydration. Dehydration that's associated with that wall that you hear about in marathons, right, guys that haven't run it before, or those that you may have experienced in the past, or what Ben was talking about earlier with that bonking feeling. The number one reason for that is hydration when it comes down to the data and the information we go from there. Now, with that in mind, the other aspect that gets affected is cramping. So if you are very much low in hydration, then and you're dehydrated, then you do not want caffeine, dog. Trust me, this will ruin your day. Then you're actually going to directly put yourself at a greater risk of cramping and thus not be able to continue at the same speed. I think he's after my mate. I'm going to put those out the way. You don't need those. 1 second. Okay, so good boy. So that was Alfie coming to join us. Any views? No, good. So hydration's key. We get that. That's all important. How do you ensure that you uptake a significant amount of the actual water taken in, rather than need the loo and disappear off to the portaloos and lose 3, 4, 5 minutes? We need to ensure that we have electrolytes. You knew that was the answer, guys. You know that we actually absorb the water effectively with sodium, potassium, magnesium. They're the 3 key ones in those. Each of you should have an electrolyte from me. Normally a small little sachet that you add to water just helps you absorb it more effectively, thus not needing as much. So Ben, are you saying that if I lose 2 litres in my practice half marathon at marathon pace, I'm going to need to drink a whole 4 litres of water during my marathon? Because that's a lot of fluid to take on. Well, yes and no. I mean, in an ideal world, we'd hit 4 litres, but realistically, like you say, it's a lot to take on. We just need to note that if we have 3 litres, we're 1 litre off. We need to have an idea about how much we are putting ourselves at risk of dehydration, of bonking, of cramping, etc., and thus going from there. So before we even get into carbs and so on and so forth, this is a really important part that's often overlooked. And of course, it gets affected by the conditions, the humidity, the temperature, what we're wearing, and so on. So that is going to be one of our things to take away within your training, is do a sweat test. You need scales and you need to be able to optimize that. If you don't want to do the maths, kilograms times liters, etc., you just send me your start and finish weight or weight loss difference and how far you've gone. And with this, we always do this at marathon pace, ideally in a similar conditions to what we would have on marathon day. Hard to tell, I know. So why not try it in different conditions, see how it changes. Okay, so next up we get into the marathon specifics. So on the marathon website, whether it's London, whether it's Amsterdam, whether it's Valencia, etc. and so forth, Brighton Trail, then they will tell you more about what nutrition can be found at the aid stations. So at each of your stations, you have specific food or nutrition, whether it's bananas or gels or what have you, that you can maximize if you, for example, drop your gels during the run. It's happened to me, or you forget them in a marathon pack. It has also happened to me and other people I've trained. So it's quite good to note that you can go from these as well. And someone from our previous Personify Marathon block, Julie Hill, who ran her PB, she actually practiced with all the nutrition that was on the aid station, just because she ran low on one of them and she could grab the spare gel that they have there. And you can do that just by checking out the website, find out what they're going to have at the aid station. Why not buy a couple of those and test them out in training, just so you know on race day, if you have to go for the freebies they give out, or you just want to make the most of your money, then you can utilize those as well, guys. Cool. So let's get into it. Macronutrients. Carbohydrates, need loads of those, right? How much and where and what is it all about? So carbohydrates in weight loss are often known as the devil. Agreed? You've heard that before. Carbohydrates in marathons are often known as the essential part that we need to get by. And the key thing with this is all about how much we need. And this is different per athlete. So carbohydrates are our energy source. If you are running significantly low on these, then or low on the stored version of these, the glycogen stores, then your body is going to feel like it is depleted. So it will feel like it won't be able to optimize your running pace. You won't be able to run at that PB intensity. So how much do we lose during a race? Well, this is typically between 30 and 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour. Now, an example of this is the SIS fuel beta aspects that some of you may have had in those. This is 46 grams. So the reason I've added that in for a few of you guys is this is an alternative sort of shot block aspect that that isn't a gel. So it's really it's chewed, it's very chewy, but it's a good alternative to a gel if you don't like the consistency of gels, for example. Now, why 30 to 60 grams per hour? Why is it not a set amount for everybody? Well, this all depends on body weight, the speed you're running, your need for storage, how you've carb loaded, etc. For example, a sub 3 hour runner weighing about 75 kilograms will require 55 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour, because you're running a bit faster and typically would be weighing the top end for a marathon runner of that speed. Okay, lighter runners or slow runners would require less. And once again, we look to measure your energy levels during your run. You can do that on a Likert scale of 1 to 5, 5 being optimum, 1 being terrible, and just share it with just a 1 out of 5, 4 out of 5, whatever, at the end of your Sunday run in your Airtable. This data is so personalized and so useful when it comes down to perfecting, to understanding, to optimizing your race nutrition, because it's not race nutrition for a personified marathon athlete, it's race nutrition for you, proven and tested. So the first 40 to 60 minutes of a marathon, your carbohydrate needs will already be covered by your pre-race carb loading. Another topic we really delve into closer to marathon day. The likes of Henriette have already done those. Darren's potentially got those and discussed that before. If you want to know more about that now, there's articles on the Personified Fitness website, and you've got a fact sheet in your marathon plans. But that means that your first 40 to 60 minutes, depending on how you've carb loaded, is free. What that also means is if you go out to run a 10K up to about 10 miles for some of you speedy sub 330s, then anything between 40 and 60 minutes, then you're typically going to not need to utilize these types of foods. So anything really up to 10K, you don't need to add any extra race nutrition when it comes down to carbohydrates. Interesting, right? So over 10K, we start to consider what we're having and what we're utilizing. Okay, guys. So any questions at this stage? I'll shut up for a bit. Is there any questions that find me my way? Guys, dive in, get interacting. It's really useful to get any questions. Always lovely to answer those. You don't have to hear my voice for a bit. Okay, so what does that look like? We've already said that typically like the shot block sort of aspects like this that we've discussed before, is 46 grams, but what about a banana? A banana typically is anywhere between 25 and 30 grams. If you're not looking for supplements, you're looking to utilize it there. I would always recommend a sub 4 hour marathoner to test out supplements and so forth. One of my favorites is this one. And the reason being is they are made to be optimized for quicker runners. They have something called multidextrin or maltodextrin, which is a fast release carbohydrates. Don't let the science go beyond you guys, just ignore it if it's too much. But this is like the whey protein of the carbohydrate world. It's absorbed really quickly, so it's used really quickly. And you'll have that in pretty much every gel, any decent gel. You're looking at SISs, your high fives, your variety of key bits you've got there. You'll find those in the Morton gels. You find them in the Morton 320, which is just basically a maltodextrin drink with electrolytes. And that is a sugar that we take on and we use. Other sugar sources like gels or even jelly babies, 10 jelly babies, like the sound of that, right? Running for jelly babies. That's more appropriate for those that are running slower than 4 hours. And 10 jelly babies, typically the Haribo ones, for example, give you 14 to 18 grams for those. So that is about 1.4 to 1.8 grams per jelly baby, depending on the brand, but I think it's 1.6 or 16 grams per 10, the Haribo. And what that does is it keeps me, I don't know about you guys, keeps me motivated to move on. So that's an idea of what we have. We're going to try them out. We're going to test them out on our long runs. We're going to get a feel of what works best for us, what tastes best, how often to have them, and we move beyond those. So the next two topics we talk about are caffeine and digestive issues like IBS and so on, the things that we never really want to ask questions about, but also really important to achieving your goals. So we dive into caffeine first. And those that were on the marathon call a few weeks ago, I tested out the sweet. Give me a thumbs up if you've tried this out yet. I know John Barnes is keen to test it out. No, okay, cool. We've got a couple. Yes, nice, Dan. Nice, lovely. Good stuff, guys. So that is, it's been part of my PB process recently. It's a pretty nice tasting caffeine supplement. And those, can I get just like a show of hands who's tried a Revy before? So they look like this. They go on your tongue. Wow, quite a few of you, Melanie. Good stuff. Kate's already all over it. Yeah, fantastic, guys. So yeah, Revies are like half a cup of coffee. And fair to give me a nod if they taste pretty minging and disgusting, right? Yeah, aftertaste isn't great, but it's a good sort of way of actually having that there as a short caffeine burst for maybe a 5-10K result, or at the end of a run, it can fit in a pocket. It's quite useful. Well, the reason for caffeine being part of this call is it's been proven to reduce perception of intensity, exercise intensity in studies. I've actually studied this myself with rowers at university level and got into it with running following that. It's been proven as a positive mindset tool. Now, we of course touched on the mindset introduction to mindset last week, but when you're in control, when you're feeling good, running's easier. So what we have on this is you plain and simply open that. It comes out as a little tab, looks really interesting for those beginner runners that they watch you open this silver packet and put this on your tongue. Like so, they give you a funny look at parkrun. It's quite funny for those reasons. Okay, great stuff. He's utilizing this ahead of this, that, and the other, but it is a really good way to make running feel easier. So that's going to positively impact your mindset. But if you are having too much of this at the beginning of an endurance run, a marathon, then this can actually have a negative impact on your overall result. So those that are used to having this before a park run, before maybe a 5-10K, then great, because it's a short-term, higher, quicker finishing intensity. So you can also get caffeine in gels. Okay, and you can also have that as a tablet form, or like I say in the strip that we discussed from Revies, or coffee beforehand, etc. and so forth. But with the marathon, I would look to avoid having too much beforehand in a coffee basis or so forth, because it's likely to make sure that the perception of running is easier. Now, between you and me, guys, your marathon pace will feel like a piece of cake through that first 10K. Even if you're going for those silly fast times, because you would have already trained to beyond 10K at marathon pace. So it is quite easy to hit or run faster than your marathon pace in the first steps. So you do not need any caffeine through that first, I would say, half marathon. And personally, discussing this with elite nutritionists, those that have been spoken to me before. My elite nutritionists that I've talked to are John Heiss mainly, Matt Lovell. These guys, Matt Lovell is a nutritionist who's worked with Man City, Tottenham Hotspur, England Rugby, and helped them win the World Cup back in the day. John Heiss is Cristiano Ronaldo's nutritionist. I've had one-to-ones with these guys where I've discussed these topics and created the information we have today. And they've come up and they've said that the optimal times to have this is miles 20 and 23. When you start to perceive yourself with running out of energy, those carbohydrate glycogen stores are running low, you need something that makes running feel a bit easier. So whether it's a sweet, whether it's this, you need to be able to stick that in your face and just get a little bit of a pick-me-up, or just to continue at the same level rather than dropping off the edge. So I look to utilize those in a gel form currently at miles 20 and 23. Those that work in kilometers, that is going to be kilometer 32 and 37. And this is, of course, another thing to test as you get towards the end of your run. So if you're doing let's say a 15 miler, just try to utilize it 5k before the end of that long run, or 3 miles before the end of the run, and just see if you can maintain pace through the end when your legs are tiring. If so, great. Is it something you look forward to? Maybe, maybe not. Definitely. This tastes like toffee. If you give me a toffee sweet at any time in my day, I'm probably going to say, I like the idea of that. Doesn't mean I'll take it, but if you can tell me that it's going to benefit my life in what I'm doing currently and make me hurt less, I'm definitely going to find it hard to turn that down. So yeah, test them out. If you want to know more about these ones though, I'm not looking to sell them. I'm just looking to give you them next time I see you. Sound like a drug dealer. Then I will definitely make sure I've got a couple spare in the car where I am, park runs, etc. And just grab some off me. Okay, so what also happens with caffeine, especially if it's not something you normally have in your day-to-day basis, is it can lead to digestive issues, and it can be a barrier for you trialing or doing these. The thought of actually having to run off to the loo, or just generally the stomach just cramping up. You may have experienced this in the past in running, and this is one of the barriers that I face quite a lot with runners that are new to caffeine. I don't have much caffeine in my diet. I mean, I realistically only have caffeine when I'm around Laura and a few of you guys where we're having a catch up, Melanie a bit as well, but not too much, just a tea. And the one of the main things is those digestive issues. So I want to just dive into that as a final point on this one, guys, unless you have any questions, and discuss IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, and how this is really common in endurance runners and just runners generally, and what this can be down to. So this is actually a disorder that can be personally affected by how your bowel works. So first of all, it could be a genetic issue. It could be something that's just personalized to you. If that is the case, I would always look for really easily digestible foods and don't go for complexity. So don't look for your Michelin star lobster thermidor before you run. Don't look for curries, etc. and so forth. Just keep it really simple. But generally, for most of us, it's affected by protein. Very hard thing to digest. That comes back to the point I've just made. And fats, good and bad. So saturated, unsaturated, maybe avocados, maybe fish, maybe McDonald's, or just generally a large steak where we've had a lot of fat in those. And having those in a pre-race meal, your stomach is going, whoa, I've got a lot to deal with here. So what it's doing is it's slushing it around, trying to deal with it. And what it has as its main sort of, I guess, energy source is oxygen from blood. But your muscles, your legs specifically, are stealing all of that blood that's produced by the heart, or most of it, and thus the stomach can't work effectively. So two things tend to happen. Your stomach sends out this pain impulse known as a cramp or muscular cramp. We call it a lower abdominal cramp. And if you've experienced those before, it's not nice. But the key thing here is all your body's saying is stop doing what you're doing, because I need to digest this food. It's not going anywhere. It needs to be digested. It's my job. I need to do it now. And you're running and stealing all that blood from me. The second thing that typically happens is you feel sick. And that's because, one, your food can't digest and move down your body. I won't go into too much detail. And it can't move forwards. Or your body goes into the opposite angle and just throws loads of acid at it. He said, I haven't got time to deal with this. I need to digest this. I'm going to turn this into a really acidic mix and just digest it quickly. And this leads to an upset stomach. You feel that really disgusting sort of pain and aches, or it just feels really acidic in that area. You can get issues such as acidity in the throat or in your esophagus, or you could have loose bowels. So there's a variety of factors and reasons it comes to it. But the main thing here is protein and fats, or different foods that you're not used to, that you've tried out, lead to this happening. So what we're looking to do is to test out our nutrition effectively during training. Now that sounds like you're trying to make me pop to the loo during my long runs, Ben. No, that's not the goal. The goal, I would say, with this is to find out what works most effectively to achieve what we can use on race day, so we don't have to deal with that. So if you're really worried about this is something that's affected you in the past, find a loop that is laps, that goes past multiple loos, right? Okay, a good one that I've noted in the locality, if you're based in around Crawley, or you've come to our Tilgate strength sessions, or you've trained at K2 track before, is one that goes down the access road that we run up towards Smith and Weston. Yes, that's not massively flat. Comes back down past Tilgate shops, round to the roundabout with a big football on it, and back down to K2. So that typically is a 2.2 mile loop, and that is a great way to just run past the loos when they're open on Tilgate, run past K2, a variety of factors if you need to. So you've got a couple of loos on that. Yeah, so all cool. So what I would recommend on this, it all comes down to it, guys. It's the basic rule of thumb with this topic is record, record, record. Tell me what you've tried. Give me some feedback on it. Taste, but mainly how it's affected you, how it fits into your race schedule, and how you would add that in. Get an idea if you're not sure, if you're completely new to endurance race nutrition, just ask Ben, what do you think about these foods? You said don't need anything between 40 and 60 minutes. Well, what mile do I have that? What time do I have that? Normally comes down to mile 5 for those running around about 4.5 hours, or typically about 45 minutes to 50 minutes into your run, you'd have your first gel supplement and so forth. If you're really struggling with actually chewing anything or eating gels, there is drink alternatives. I've done 20 milers on this stuff. This is Morton 320. Those that have trained with me in the past, I know many of you have tested this out before. It is quite a sweet drink, so it's not suited to those that are more savoury options, right, Melanie? But it is a fantastic thing that Kate Barnes has ran her PBs on, that a few of you also out there have tested out before. Yeah, I'm not sure if Matt, if you've tried that one before, but it is a fantastic, fantastic option. I wouldn't run a marathon without it. You can get them with caffeine, but once again, I'd go for the black ones first of all to get started. I personally can drink that because it's such a simple process, 10 minutes before I start, and it just optimizes my my carb sources before I even run. I get an extra mile out of my carb loading going into that. I think Monica's used that as well, potentially as well. So anyway, so a couple of key bits to look at. You've got a few things to get you started with in your marathon setup plan. So try them out first. We can also swap and move things around between the group. Use a WhatsApp, just saying, guys, I've got a whole pack of these things that I just didn't really get on with the taste. They're quite a bit too sweet for me. Does anybody want to swap them for anything else? And guys, in the past, we've done that, and it just saves a bit of money. It just moves it around, and you can just test, especially if they're like this and they come individually sachets. And you can just try out different ones and swap them, etc. So your next steps, and to finish off the call for today, is to find out what drinks, what carbohydrate options will be available at your marathon, at the aid station. So check those out, see what's going down, and see what we're having from there. The next thing to check out is about the water, is your sweat rate. Have a look on your plan with your the actual maths in terms of how to utilize your sweat rate and your fluid intake requirement. Okay, so just to briefly go on that, as we talked about, that's kilograms equals liters lost. So that's 1 for 1 kilogram, 1 liter lost. Test it out, find out what you're basically sweating out at the moment, and thus how much you need to take in, and get beyond cramping, get beyond that level 2. And the next one, most important thing on your plan, and why we sort of step above any other typical plan you can just download, is test different race nutrition alternatives, different strategies. Take them a little bit earlier than you have in the past, maybe if you're a multiple runner like Pippa, marathon runner. So, or maybe actually having them a little bit later, seeing if that's okay and suits you better in terms of energy output and input to output. Test those on your training runs so you know exactly what to do on race day. You do this right, guys, you'll know exactly what hydration you need, what carbohydrate intake you need, what caffeine you need, and even your pre-race breakfast as part of this will be set up and sorted, which I would class as part of this too, on race day. So that takes a lot of the pressure away from you on marathon race day, and you note exactly what you need to do. And all you do is you just make sure you've got them in stock. You just eat them, and then you know exactly what times to have them. And personally, from a mindset point of view, and I spoke to the Barneses about this just this week, Kate and Warren, I was talking about actually how I'm quite motivated by knowing what I'm looking to eat next. So what I do is I run 5K at exactly the pace I need to run for the goal as my first point. I don't think anything beyond that. And then as I unlock that first 5K, I run to my next food. And it's normally in between 5Ks for me. So I run and I get fed. And whether it's a gel, whether it's a drink, whatever it may be, I get fed and I have some calories. Then I run to the next 5K, tick off 10K, then I get fed. And then I run to the next 5K, which tick off 15K. Then I get fed maybe a mile and a half later, a couple of K later. So that's quite a good way to break up a run, because you're only ever running 2 to 3K, only ever running sort of 1.5 to 2 miles. So it's really important. Cool. Guys, I've done loads of talking today. I haven't got any questions directly added onto those, but you know where I am. It'd be great to get your feedback and information on this as we go along, because that's going to mean that you're more prepared than anyone else, and you know exactly what works best for Anita, for Kaz, for Dan, for Johnny, for John, for Kate, for Matt, for Melanie, Monica, Pippa, Selfie, everybody on this, JD. So that's going to be key. Understand what we go for and test them out. And I just want to get feedback on this because I'm quite new to this, and I don't think I've had it without running a PB yet. So that works quite well on the faster stuff. Keep the feedback coming, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. It's been an interesting topic to start off. We've got a few more on nutrition. We talk about nutrition for recovery. We talk about nutrition for pre-run in terms of carb loading, and we go through a bit more detail on those too. So watch out for those in future weeks.